Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Hena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Ajnanati Mirandhasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Stavaram Jangamam Yaptam Yat Kinchit Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Hena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Babaji Vyapiyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Hena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sarva Shruti Shiroratna Virajita Padam Bojaha Vedantam Boja Suryoya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chaitanya Shashvata Shanto Vyomatito Niranjanaha Bindunada Kalatita Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jnana Shakti Samayodha Tattvamala Vibhushitaha Bhukti Mukti Pradhataicha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Aneka Janma Samprapta Karma Bandha Vidahine Atmajnana Pradhanena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shoshanam Bhava Sindhosha Yapanam Sara Sampadaha Guru Padonakam Samyak Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Na Guru Radhikam Tattvam Na Guru Radhikam Tapaha Tattvajnana Param Nasti Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Manata Shri Jagannatha Madguru Shri Jagadguru Mamatma Sarva Bhutatma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Guru Radhiranadhischa Guru Paramadevatam Guru Parataram Nasti Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva.
Bhagavate Swami Vishwananda Swami Vishwananda Om Namo Bhagavate Swami Vishwananda Swami Vishwananda Om Namo Bhagavate Swami Vishwananda Swami Vishwananda Om Namo Bhagavate tu Bhagavan ka Svarupa tu Narayana Rupa tu Bhagavan ka Svarupa tu Narayana Rupa tu Bhagavan ka Svarupa tu Narayana Rupa tu Bhagavan ka Svarupa tu Om Namo Bhagavate Swami Vishwananda Swami Vishwananda 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 Tere Hara Ek Naam Par Hara Ek Hai Prabhu Tere Hara Naam Par Hum sabhi jude Hai Prabhu Tere Hara Ek Naam Par Hum sabhi jude Hai Prabhu Tere Hara Ek Naam Par Hum sabhi jude Hai Prabhu Om Namo Bhagavate Swami Vishwananda Swami Vishwananda 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 Tu hi hai hamare dua Tu hi hai hamare manazir Tu hi hai kani dua Tu hi hai hamare manzil Tu hi hai hamare dua Tu hi hai hamare manazir Tu hi hai hamare dua Tu hi Om Namo Bhagavate Swami Vishwananda Swami Vishwananda 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 Shri Vishwananda Swami Vishwananda Vishwananda Swami Vishwananda Shri Vishwananda Swami Vishwananda Vishwananda Swami Vishwananda Om Namo Bhagavate Swami 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 Vishwananda Swami Vishwananda Nara
Bhagavanaka Swarupato.
Om Namo Bhagavate Swami Vishwananda Swami Vishwananda.
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 Om Namo Bhagavate Swami Vishwananda Swami Vishwananda. Om Avatara Shishaya Namaha. Om Vishamaya Namaha. Om Devakarya Samudhataya Namaha. Om Sukshmatanave Namaha. Om Chinmayaya Namaha. Om Gurumurtaye Namaha. Om Sundaraya Namaha. Om Sulochanaya Namaha. Om Sumukhaya Namaha. Om Charuhasaya Namaha. Om Keshavaya Namaha. Om Padmambujaya Namaha. Om Andargamanaya Namaha. Om Charumbharadharine Namaha. Om Ramaya Namaha. Om Mandirastapakaya Namaha. Om Shri Bhutabhrteshwarnath Namaha. Om Gayatri Ajvane Namaha. Om Arpana Srikarakaya Namaha. Om Vishnu Pujakaya Namaha. Om Namo Narayana Iti Mantrapasakaya Namaha. Om Swaramaya Namaha. Om Madhura Kantaya Namaha. Om Krishna Sankirtana Lolupaya Namaha. Om Sutra Priyaya Namaha. Om Mitabhashine Namaha. Om Vagmine Namaha. Om Chitrakala Visharadaya Namaha. Om Vratadharaya Namaha. Om Sadhave Namaha. Om Jagatpantaya Namaha. Om Sarvalokalitaya Namaha. Om Bhakta Priyaya Namaha. Om Surdaya Namaha. Om Anukulaya Namaha. Om Neyaya Namaha. Om Sudarshanaya Namaha. Om Bhaktavatsalaya Namaha. Om Premamurtaye Namaha. Om Shubhekshanaya Namaha. Om Pritivardhanaya Namaha. Om Swastidayakaya Namaha. Om Tarakaya Namaha. Om Anugrahaya Namaha. Om Vardhanaya Namaha. Om Architaya Namaha. Om Arthaya Namaha. Om Sivitradaya Namaha. Om Janardhanaya Namaha. Om Manoharaya Namaha. Om Mahakshaya Namaha. Om Siddheshwaraya Namaha. Om Bhasmabhushitaya Namaha. Om Atmalingaya Namaha. Om Lingarchana Protsakaya Namaha. Om Siddhi Sadanaya Namaha. Om Madhavaya Namaha. Om Karupasakaya Namaha. Om Sukshmaya Namaha. Om Vishokaya Namaha. Om Satvikaya Namaha. Om Samadarshine Namaha. Om Dakshaya Namaha. Om Achityaya Namaha. Om Nirankaraya Namaha. Om Nirmohaya Namaha. Om Avyagraya Namaha. Om Jitakrodaya Namaha. Om Vinayashiyaya Namaha. Om Svavashaya Namaha. Om Kushalaya Namaha. Om Shamaya Namaha. Om Satyadharmaya Namaha. Om Nirvikalpaya Namaha. Om Viraktaya Namaha. Om Atindraya Namaha. Om Satyasandaya Namaha. Om Pavitraya Namaha. Om Madhurasvabhavaya Namaha. Om Suranandaya Namaha. Om Nandanaya Namaha. Om Prasanatmane Namaha. Om Bhaktanidhaye Namaha. Om Sakshaye Namaha. Om Samatmaye Namaha. Om Sadayogine Namaha. Om Haraye Namaha. Om Sutapaya Namaha. Om Samyaya Namaha. Om Guyaya Namaha. Om Vimuktatmaya Namaha. Om Gabiraya Namaha. Om Guptaya Namaha. Om Atmaramaya Namaha. Om Srinivasaya Namaha. Om Devaya Namaha. Om Jyotidharaya Namaha. Om Dhanyaya Namaha. Om Gurave Namaha. Om Duratikramaya Namaha. Om Gahanaya Namaha. Om Bhagavate Namaha. Om Harisharana Margadarshakaya Namaha. Om Kutasadagatakaya Namaha. Om Aviprayaya Namaha. Om Sarvamata Samatyaya Namaha. Om Shamakata Bhavavadhakaya Namaha. Om Devavatar Sri Vishwananda Swami Namaha. Ato Deva Avanto no Yato Vishnu Vishakrame Pradivya Saptadhamabhi Idam Vishnu Vichakrame Vedani Lade Padam Samudamasya Pagum Sure Trini Pada Vishakrame Vishnur Gopadabhyaha Ato Dharmani Dharyane Vishnu Karmani Pashyata Yato Vratani Paspashe Indrasya Yujasaka Tat Vishnu Paramam Padagam Sada Pashyanti Surya Diviva Chakshuratatam Tat Vipraso Vipanyavo Jagarvagum Sasamindate Vishnu Yat Paramam Padam. Premavataraya Vidmahe Satgurudevaya Dhimahi Tanno Vishwananda Prachodayate. Om Premavataraya Vidmahe Satgurudevaya Dhimahi Tanno Vishwananda Prachodayate. Om Premavataraya Vidmahe Satgurudevaya Dhimahi Tanno Vishwananda Prachodayate. Tunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvigam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Om Bhurvuvasvaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Yo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhurvuvasvaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Yo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhurvuvasvaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Yo Yona Prachodayat.
Krishna Vishnu Madhusudana Kaitavari Narayana Shita Trivikrama Chakrapane Deities Sajadara Sridhara Vasudeva Gopala Krishna Haraye Tava Suprabhatam Shri Rukmini Sabhavana Sare Murare Radhesha Gopesha Surupa Gamani Vandya Shri Radhakashaya Vaikuntha Pate Bhuvane Kamurte Gopala Deva Haraye Tava Suprabhatam Nina Krite Kamatarupa Varaha Murte Devi Kamaya Guhane Brurama Rama Shri Rama Krishna Yadunandana Kalki Rupam Gopala Krishna Haraye Tava Suprabhatam Govinda Madhava Mukunda Parat Paresha Damodara Jagarananda Kadarishori Gopa Gopi Jana Samvrita Dina Bando Gopi Jana Priyaraye Tava Supravatam Shiradisayim Bhujagadi Patalpashayim Sarvakta Vritsadanashayim Ramangashayim Shri Gopamama Mrudutalpa Sukadisayim Gopa Vallavaraye Tava Supravatam Shri Kasyapatri Sukanarada Gotamadim Kamarshi Sangamani Sangava Bharatesho Ishtanti Devatava Darshana Bhagayeto Gopala Sekraraye Tava Supravatam Mandara Jadi Tulasi Dala Malikanyaye Malyani Anjali Pute Samudarandi Ishtanti Tatvavata Dharatale Munindra Kadha Manohararaye Tava Supravatam Vedantrayam Patati Gautama Kana Guya Gayanti Satguna Gano Varada Savarga Sankirtayanti Tava Nama Kada Vishesha Shri Narada Dirishaya Tava Supravatam Govardhano Dharana Gopa Kishora Gopa Gopi Janamrita Suvesha Vavadipota Trilokya Mohana Sumangala Divya Deha Shri Rukmini Savarana Tava Supravatam Shri Vatsasina Saranagata Parijata Patarti Banjana Kripa Karadina Bando Nityanta Gayati Jana Priya Divya Rupa Shri Nanda Gopatanaya Tava Supravatam Padmasha Padma Mukha Padmadara Prameya Padmalaya Strita Padma Nivasa Shori Padmo Bhavati Surasevita Pada Padma Padma Dinata Haraye Tava Supravatam Vrindarta Devi Haranaya Mahindravanya Tandarpadarpa Haratinya Sudesha Rupa Chandrananaya Sida Chandanani Pradeya Govinda Yada Haraye Tava Supravatam Shri Nanda Nandana Yashoda Kumara Dhiya Mayangadina Davishona Supushpahara Nilam Buddha Susarira Ramavihara Gopala Deva Haraye Tava Supravatam Shri Vaishyajan Bhavati Satya Sutanti Bhadra Shri Mitra Vinda Divasa Prabhu Purti Kanyahe Ishtanti Divya Bhavane Tava Sevanatam Gopi Mana Priyaraye Tava Supravatam Shri Krishna Achyutananta Mukunda Shori Radha Manohara Janardana Chakrapani Namani Divya Munayudani Sambaranti Brahmi Muhurta Samaye Tava Supravatam Shri Krishna Suprabhatam Ye Patanti Margisam Bhuri Krita Mahapapam Shri Krishna Graheto
Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadira Nirgovinda Sarva Karana Karana Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Chintamani Prakara Satma Sukalpa Vriksha Laksha Viteshu Surabhira Vipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Shata Sangrama Sevyamanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Venugrayantam Aravinda Dalayatasam Sheshashobham Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami
Alola Chandra Kala Satpanamalya Vanshi Ratnam Gadam Pranayatini Kala Vilasam Shamam Pribandalaritam Niyata Prakasham Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami
Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Ajala Janja Sakavirya Vittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrasya Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami
Advaitamachutamanadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanamsha Vedeshu Durlabam Adurlamam Atma Bhakto Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami
Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Pantastu koti satavatsara sampragamyo Vayo yatapi manaso muni pungavanam Sokyastiyas prapada chinga vichinta tatve Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami
Ekdopya Saura Jayatum Jagadanda Kotim Yachaktirasti Jagadanda Chaya Yadantaha Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami
Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Yad bhava bhavita diyo manujasateva Samprapya rupa mahima sanayana bhusha Suktiryameva nigama pratitaistuvanti Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami
Ananda Chinmaya Raza Pratipavitabi Tabiya Eva Nijarupataya Kalabihi Goloka Eva Nivasatya Kilatma Bhuto Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami
Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Premandana Shrita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadeva Hidayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunasvarupam Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami
Ramadimurti Shukalani Amena Tishtan Nanavataram Akarut Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Svayam Samabhavat Paramapumanyo Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami
Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Yasya prabha prabhavato jagaranta koti Kotishvashesha vasudadi vibhuti vinam Tat brahmanishkaram anantam ashesha bhutam Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami
Maya iyasya sagadanda shatani sute Tregunyatati shaya veda vitayamana Sattva valambi parasattva vishuddha sattvam Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami
Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Ananda chinmaya rasatmataya manashu Vyapraninam pratipalam svaratam upetya Nilayitena bhuvanani jayate jashram Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami
Golokanamni nijadamni tale chatasya Devi Mahesha Haridama Suteshu Teshu Tete Prabhava Nichaya Vichashchayena Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami
Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Shri 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 Pralaya Sadhana Shakti Rekha Chayeva yasya bhuvanani vibharti durga Vichanurupamapi yashta chatesha tesa Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami
Shiramyakadadi vikara vishesha yoga Sanjayate naitataprita asti eto Yashambhutam avitatasamupeti karyat Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami
Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Vipashireva idashantarama vipetya Vipayate vivitayetu samana dharma Yastadeva isha vishnutaya vibhati Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami
Yakaranarnava jalit bhajati sma yoga Nidram mananta jagadanta saroma kupaha Adar shaktim avalambya param samurtim Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami
Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Yasekadishya sitakara matavalamya Jivanti loma vilaja jagahantanata Vishnun mahansaya yasya kala vishesho Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami
Vasvanyatashma sakaleshu nijeshu tejaha Viyam kiyatra katayatyapi tattva atra Ranaya esha jagadanda vidana karta Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami
Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Yattara paravayugam vinidaya kumbha Vande pranama samaye sagaradiyaja Vignam vihantu malayasya jagatrayasya Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami
Agnirva ega ganamambu maruti shasha Kalasta tatma manasiti jagatrayani Yasmat bhavanti vibhavanti vishanti yamsha Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami
Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Yashashturesa savitasa kalagana Rajasamasa suramurti rasesha tesha Yasyapnaya brahmati sambrita kala chakro Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami
Dharmo tapapa nishayashita yastapamsi Brahmadikita patadavadayasya jivaha Yaddattamatra vibhava prakata prabhava Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami
Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Yashvindra gopama kavindra mahosva karma Bandhana rupa palabhajana matanoti Karma nidhati kintu savati bhajam Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami
Yankroda kama saja pranayadi viti Vatsalya moha guru gaurava sevya maivari Sanchitya dasya sanishimta munapurete Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Shukdev, we'll chant Sri Shuktam, Bhu Shuktam and Nila Shuktam. Oh
सहस्रजां चन्द्रां हिरण्मयीं लक्ष्मीं जातवेदो महावहां तां महावह जातवेदो लक्ष्मीं मनपगामिनीं यस्यां हिरण्यं विन्देयं गामश्वं पुरुषानहम् अश्वपूर्वां रथमद्यं हस्तिनादप्रबोधिनीं श्रियं देवीमुपह्वये श्रीमा देवी जुषताम् कांसोऽस्मितां हिरण्यप्राकारामार्द्रां ज्वलन्तीं तृप्तां तर्पयन्तीं पद्मे स्थितां पद्मवर्णां तामियोपह्वये श्रियं चन्द्रां प्रभासां यशसा ज्वलन्तीं श्रियं लोके देवचुष्टाम् उदारां तां पद्मिनीं शरणमहं प्रपद्ये लक्ष्मीर्मे नश्यतां त्वं वृणे आदित्यवर्णे तपसोऽधिजातो वनस्पतिस्तव वृक्षोत बिल्वः तस्य फलानि तपसा नुदन्तु मायान्तरायश्च वाय अलक्ष्मी उपेतु मां देवसखा कीर्तिश्च मनिना सह प्रादुर्भूतोऽस्मि राष्ट्रेऽस्मिन् कीर्तिवृद्धिं ददातु मे शुद्धिपासामलां ज्येष्ठाम् अलक्ष्मीं नाशयाम्यहम् अभूतिमसमृद्धिं च सर्वां निर्नुद मे गृहात् गन्धाद्वारां दुरादर्शं नित्यपुष्टं करीषिणीम् ईश्वरीगुं सर्वभूतानां तामियोपह्वये श्रियम् मनसा काममाकुतिं वाचः सत्यमशीमयि पशूनां रूपमनस्य मयि श्रीशयतं यशः कर्दमेन प्रजा भूता मयि सम्भव कर्दमा श्रियं वासय मे कुले मातरं पद्ममालिनीम् अपसृजन्तु स्निग्धानि चिक्री तव समे गृहे निचा देवीं मातरं श्रियं वासय मे कुले आर्द्रां पुष्करिणीं पुष्टिं सुवर्णां हेममालिनीं सूर्यां हिरण्मयीं लक्ष्मीं जातवेदो महावहां आर्द्रां यक्करिणीं यष्टिं पिङ्गलां पद्ममालिनीं चन्द्रां हिरण्मयीं लक्ष्मीं जातवेदो महावहां तामावह जातवेदो लक्ष्मीं मनपगामिनीं यस्यां हिरण्यं प्रभूतं गावो दास्यो स्वाहां विन्देयन् पुरुषानहम् यशुचिप्रयतो भूत्वा जुहुयादजहं वहम् सूक्तं पञ्चदशाक्षं च श्रीकामा सततं जपेत् पद्मप्रिये पद्मिनि पद्महस्ते पद्मालये पद्मदलाय तक्षि विश्वप्रिये विष्णुमनोनुकूले तत्पादपद्मं मयि सन्निधस्त्वा महादेवी च विद्महे विष्णुपत्न्यै च धीमहि तन्नो लक्ष्मी प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। भूमिर्भुम्नाद्योर्वण्यन्तरिक्षं महित्वा उपस्थे ते देव्यतिथेऽग्निमन्नादमनाद्याय ददे आयङ्गो कृष्णिरक्रमी दशनं मातरं पुनः पितरं च त्रयं शुभः त्रिगुंशदमविराजति वक्पतङ्गाय शिश्रये प्रत्यस्य वह द्युभिः अस्य प्राणादपान्नत्यन्तश्चरति रोचना द्यक्यमैषः शुभः यद्वाह कृदपरो वपमन्युना यदवर्त्या सुकल्पमग्ने त्वत्त्व पुनस्तोदीपयामसि यत्ते मन्युपरोपतस्य पृथिवीम् अनुदद्वसे आदित्य विश्वे तद्देवा वसवश्च समावरम् मनो ज्योतिर्जुषताम् अर्जं वीक्षीणं यज्ञगुं समिमं ददातु बृहस्पतिस्तनुतामिमां नो विश्वे देवा यमादयन्ताम् मेदिनी देवी वसुन्धरा स्याद्वसुधा देवी वासवी Brahmavarchasa Pitrinagum Sotram Chakshurmanaha Devi Hiranyagarbhini Devi Prasuvari Sadane Satyayane Siddham Samudravati Savitriyano Devi Mayangi Mahodarani Mahovyatishta Shringe Shringe Yagne Yagne Vibhishani Indrapagni Vyapini Surasariya Vayumati Jarashayani Shriyam Daraja Satyando Parimedini Zoparidatam Parigaya Vishnupadni Mahi Devim Madhavim Madhava Priyam Lakshmihim Priyasakim Devim Namam Achyuta Vallavam Dhanurdaraya Vidmahe Sarvasiddhi Chadimai Tanno Dana Prachodayate Om Shanti 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 Nilam Devi Gum Sharanamaham Prapadye Vinai Vidavati Savita Vidyatipatye Payasvati Rantirashano Astu Druvadisham Vishnu Panyagora Syeshana Sahasoyam Manotaha Brihaspati Matarishvota Vayu Sanduvana Vata Abhino Grinantu Dishtambo Divo Daruna Pritidya Asyeshana Jagato Vishnu Padni Mahadevi Cha Vidmahe Vishnu Padni Cha Dhimai Tanno Nila Prachodayate Om Shanti 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 Shri Guruvyo Namaha Hari Om.
Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Gurudev, good morning. So the verse that or the topic that I chose for today actually kind of changed in the last 2 minutes. So the thought that I had was to speak about impulse control, as Krishna speaks about the importance of controlling one's impulses also as a means to that which we, whether spiritually or not, look for one way or the other, which is to become a joyful person. And in chapter 5, verse 23, Krishna says that it is only possible to become a joyful person by controlling to resist one's impulses that arise from desire and anger. It's only such a person who is able or who learns to control one's impulses that arise from these two is a self-controlled person and a joyful person. So if we understand that we have to control those impulses that arise, to become a joyful person, and I'm sure we all know that, equally, I think we also know how difficult it can be or often is, right? So I think when we understand this, the truth, when we analyze ourselves, which is what Guruji always asks us to do, at least for myself, I've seen that whenever certain impulses arise, they're usually never connected to what I actually want. They're usually always connected to cover up something that I don't want to look at. So when I have a certain difficult situation or something that upsets me in my daily life, what comes up? I want chocolate. Right? It has nothing to do with the actual problem right now. It is something that arises to cover up the actual problem so I don't have to deal with the problem. I just have certain short-term pleasure, something that I can enjoy, that distracts me from the actual problem of solving it, because that's more difficult. That takes more energy, it takes more overcoming myself. And so these kind of impulses continuously arise as a distraction to the actual advancement of ourself. And so it's important, the first step is important to firstly become conscious of it. After becoming conscious of it, it becomes more easier, but it's still difficult. Because even if you can see what it does, to choose not to engage in it is a second problem. Because just to see it doesn't mean you stop doing it, no? But it's the first step. And so once we understand the problem and we consciously choose not to engage in the desires that arise from those impulses, what happens next? Usually in your experience, what comes next is more sadness, more loneliness, more frustration. Right? Because if you don't engage in them, the thing that you think makes you feel pleasurable or makes you feel pleasure and joy, if you don't engage in it, what you feel is more worse. More sadness, more frustration, right? And so the immediate reaction or the immediate experience of controlling one's impulses is not great. It's not enjoyable. And so to convince ourselves to do it is not an easy thing because of that. Because the immediate experience we have is not nice. No? But what comes out of that frustration or that sadness or that loneliness, whatever it may be, if you're able to push through it and resist, what comes out is a much greater clarity. Because I think many people come to the spiritual path. Why? Because they become frustrated of looking for happiness in the outside world and they can't find it. Right? So the story that I wanted to take as an example from the Bhagavatam is the story of Pingala. I'm sure all of you know the story a little bit of Pingala. You've heard of Pingala before. So the story of Pingala is told in Canto 11, Chapter 8, kind of bleeds over a little bit, but mostly Chapter 8. And I wanted to take a couple of verses to describe her story rather than just to paraphrasing it, because I think we know her story a little bit. But what I wanted to speak about as that example is, you could call it the Pingala Gita, the Song of Pingala. So as an introduction, in Canto 11, Chapter 8, verse 27, 28, it is a description of that scene which brought the transformation of Pingala. So as the night wore on, the prostitute who intensely desired money gradually became morose and her face dried up. Thus, being filled with anxiety for money and most disappointed, she began to feel a great detachment from her situation, and happiness arose in her mind. The prostitute felt disgusted with her material situation and thus became indifferent to it. Indeed, detachment acts like a sword, cutting to pieces the binding network of material hopes and desires. Now please hear from me the song sung by the prostitute in that situation. That's why I call it the Pingala Gita. Listen to this beautiful song sung by Pingala. So you can see this situation in which Pingala finds herself as every night she stands outside of her house waiting for clients. And it's described how she walks, as the night goes on, she looks at all the men passing by, analyzing each one of them, whether this one would be interested or whether this one has good enough amount of money to pay her. She walks in, she goes back into her house, she goes out, she walks to the street, she walks around a little bit, and as the night goes on, and nobody seems to be interested, the more she gets more frustrated as time passes, until it comes to this point which I just read out from this situation of Pingala, in which he becomes so frustrated that out of that frustration grows a certain inner calmness of mind and happiness, which is exact opposite of what I described, right? Because the chain reaction that happens every time is, as I said, you have a problem, you have anxiety, you have certain fear, an impulse arises to cover it up. If you don't choose, or if you cannot cover it up, what happens is that you feel even worse. And from that feeling of feeling even worse arises clarity in life. Because when you realize you cannot have something, as he says in the second verse, in verse 28, that a sense of detachment comes. If you cannot have something, detachment arises from that realization that you cannot have what you want. And from that detachment arises clarity of what you have to do, what actually makes you happy, because you realize following material desires don't make you happy. And so you have to look for happiness or a sense of happiness somewhere else, right? So the Song of Pingala, and I only choose a couple of verses, I think 4 or 5, to exemplify, starting with verse 30. So the prostitute Pingala said, "Just see how greatly illusioned I am, because I cannot control my mind. Just like a fool, I desire lusty pleasure from an insignificant man. I am such a fool that I have given up the service of that person who, being eternally situated within my heart, is actually most dear to me. That most dear one is the Lord of the universe, who is the bestower of real love and happiness, and the source of all prosperity. Although he is in my own heart, I have completely neglected him. Instead, I have ignorantly served insignificant men who can never satisfy my real desire, and who have simply brought me unhappiness, fear, anxiety, lamentation, and illusion." So I like this, to make a break here, I like these 2 verses a lot, because they show the clarity that has arisen within Pingala. And I think it's a situation that we can very much, or if I can see from my own experience, that we can relate very much to. Not in terms of, in the same situation that she does, in terms of prostituting herself, but in a sense, we all prostitute ourselves to engaging in material desires. Not in the same way that she did, but we all have the desires that we follow. And because we engage in all those desires that the material world has to offer, we forget about him. We try to serve so many things and desires in the world that we forget about that one which is seated in our own heart, that is most closest to us, that can actually fulfill our desires and give us true happiness. But because he is so close to us, and because he's the one who's actually most dearest to us, we lose sight of him. Because often that which is most closest to us and best for us, we don't appreciate. And the more time passes in which we choose the world over him, the more we become dull and blind towards him. And the thing is, of course, he is most patient, and he will keep giving us hints and signs of, I am here if you need me, but I will not force myself on you. And so I think it comes down to, if we learn to an extent, enjoy being in misery. And Guruji, I think it was almost a bit more than 2 months ago, in January, he made a nice tweet about sadness, the importance of sadness, because sadness brings a sense of detachment. If we learn to enjoy this feeling of sadness and pain, and to go through it, because understanding that it comes from impulses, we will see that we will come to that to find reconnection with the one which is most dearest to us. This material body is like a house in which the soul is living. The bones forming my spine, ribs, arms, and legs are like the beams, cross beams, and pillars of the house. And the whole structure, which is full of stool and urine, is covered by skin, hair, and nails. The 9 doors leading into this body are constantly excreting foul substances. Besides me, what woman could be so foolish as to devote herself to this material body, thinking that she might find pleasure and love in this contraption? Although I most stubbornly hope to enjoy the material world, somehow or other detachment has arisen in my heart, and it is making me very happy. Therefore, the Supreme Lord must be pleased with me. Without even knowing it, I must have performed some activity satisfying to him. A person who has developed detachment can give up the bondage of material society, friendship, and love, and a person who undergoes great suffering gradually becomes, out of hopelessness, detached and indifferent to the material world. Thus, due to my great suffering, such detachment awoke in my heart. Yet how could I have undergone such merciful suffering if I were actually unfortunate? Therefore, I am in fact fortunate and have received the mercy of the Lord. He must somehow or other be pleased with me. So again, what is suffering actually? It is what we experience first when we cannot have what we desire. But on the other hand, if you look at suffering from a different perspective, if you look at it like Pingala realized here, that the suffering that I receive is out of mercy from the Supreme Lord. It is prasad from the Supreme Lord because for whatever reason, He cares so much for me that He gives me suffering, and because of that suffering, it gives me a sense of detachment. And so she realized that even though I have fear and anxiety, it makes me realize how much He cares for me. And I think that is a realization that is so important. Because as long as we experience and identify with fear, anxiety, pain, depression, whatever it may be that we call it, there will be a sense in which we blame Him, actually. We blame Him for the suffering that we have. Because He's the Supreme Lord. He can make us feel happy. He could make us feel pleasure. But if we don't, we blame Him for not having it. And that's a difficult standpoint to evolve from. But if we look at it from a different perspective, if we develop what she developed in this situation, which is vairagya, discrimination, and a sense of detachment that comes from discrimination, the realization that she has can arise only from that. And that's why I think this is such a important story to realize that yes, we experience pain and anxiety and fear, but it's important to put it into the right context and the right understanding so that we can actually transform from it. Because I have not read a verse yet. I will do it in the end today. I actually chose another verse, which I feel somehow is the solution to this problem, which is discrimination, which is perspective on whatever we are experiencing, and to get the strength from that perspective to go through it. So this is a verse from the same canto, chapter 10, which is just afterwards, which is some of the, you could say, the bleeding over of the story of Pingala, which is the lessons learned from the story of Pingala. From chapter 10, which is about the nature of fruitive activities, verse 3. So it says, Suptasya Vishaya Loko Dhyayato Tamanorata Nanatmaka Dvat Vipalas Tata Bhedatmadhir Gune. One who is sleeping may see many objects of sense gratification in a dream, but such pleasurable things are merely creations of the mind and are thus ultimately useless. Similarly, the living entity who is asleep to his spiritual identity also sees many sense objects, but these innumerable objects are temporary gratification, are creations of the Lord's illusory potency and have no permanent existence. One who meditates upon them, impelled by the senses, uselessly engages his intelligence. Because intelligence, discrimination is what will help us to free ourselves. But if we dull it, if we blind it and use it to waste the energy to focus on material things that we understand are not lasting anyways, then how are we ever going to free ourselves from it? And so the point that he makes here is that understand that everything we see and engage with is in a sense a dream, that we are trying to attain things like in a dream that are, once we wake up, disappear. The same thing is that anything we attain in this life will disappear the moment we die. Like Krishna says in the verse before that I said earlier about from chapter 5, Yehi samsparshaja bhoga, right? The sense object, the gratification, the pleasure that arises from sense objects is a source of suffering because they have a beginning and an end. And so the wise who understand this truth, they don't rejoice in them because they understand that it is not the pleasure. Yes, it arises, but it has an end. It has a beginning and an end. It doesn't last. And so it is like waking up from a dream and realizing, oh, everything that I have strived for is useless. And that is a very difficult realization to have. And it can be a very painful realization to have because you might have strived for something for 50 years of your life. And you realize, oops, all of a sudden, everything you look back seems useless. I remember when I met Guruji, in my family we met Guruji, this is a question that my dad asked Guruji, like the first or second time that we had an interview with Guruji. He asked him, why do I only meet you when I'm 50 years old? Because I look back and all of a sudden, everything that I did in my life seems maybe not useless. I don't know exactly remember the word that he used, but it seems meaningless, irrelevant, whatever word you might put to it. But what Guruji said to him, actually, do you think you would have met me if you had not experienced all of those things? Do you think you would have started looking for me or God if you would not have experienced all of those things? So sure, we might think of that way, the same way everything we experience is by His will. It is by His choice and His will to give us experiences of life that will bring us towards a certain direction. So again, everything is given by Him as prasad, and whether it is pleasurable or not is actually irrelevant. It's important that we understand the lessons from it and understand to search and redirect our focus on that which actually gives true happiness, true joy. And that can only be found within our own heart. Jai Gurudev.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Narasimho, Pairaito Narasimho. Yato yato yami tato 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 narasimho. Mahe narasimho, Hridaye narasimho. Mahe narasimho, Hridaye narasimho. Mahe narasimho, Hridaye narasimho. Mahe narasimho, Hridaye narasimho. Narasimham Marim Sharanam Prapade. Narasimham Marim Sharanam Prapade. Narasimham Marim Sharanam Prapade. Narasimham Marim Sharanam Prapade. Savakaira Kamalavane Nakamadbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam Vishavadringa Naira Hari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Savakara Kamalavare Nakamadbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam Vishavadringa Naira Hari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Vishavadringa Naira Hari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jai Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Yatiraj Jai Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Ramanuja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Yatiraj Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Shaligrama Pratisthitaya Mangala Mangala Me Shaligrama Pratisthitaya Mangala Mangala Me Vidandadharini Ghodhagajaya Mangala Mangala Me Vidandadharini Ghodhagajaya Mangala Mangala Me Ramanujaya Ramanujaya Mangala Mangala Me Yatirajaya Ramanujaya Mangala Mangala Me Ramanuja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Yatiraja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Mange Sakin Karyarataya Mangala Mangala Me Mange Sakin Karyarataya Mangala Mangala Me Mananataya Dharini Dhairaya Mangala Mangala Me Mananataya Dharini Dhairaya Mangala Mangala Me Ramanujaya Ramanujaya Mangala Mangala Me Yatirajaya Ramanujaya Mangala Mangala Me Ramanuja Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Yatirajaya Ramanuja Mangala Mangala Me Om Jaya Lakshmi Mata Jaya Jaya Lakshmi Mata Tumako Nishadina Sevata Tumako Nishadina Sevata Hara Vishnu Vidata Om Jaya Lakshmi Mata Umarama Brahmani Tumahe Jagamata Meya Tumahe Jagamata Surya Chandra Mayavata Surya Chandra Mayavata Nairana Rishi Gata Om Jaya Lakshmi Mata Durga Rupani Ranjani Sukha Sampati Data Meya Sukha Sampati Data Jo koi tumako dhyavata Jo koi tumako dhyavata Riddhi Siddhi Ganapata Om Jaya Lakshmi Mata Tuma Bhatala Nivasini Tuma Hi Shubhadata Meya Tuma Hi Shubhadata Dharma Prabhava Prakashini Dharma Prabhava Prakashini Bhavani Vikrata Om Jaya Lakshmi Mata Vishnagadamim Tumaratim Sabasada Gunata Meya Sabasada Gunata Sabasam Bhava Hojata Sabasam Bhava Hojata Mandana Hingabarata Om Jaya Lakshmi Mata Tuma Vinayagna na hote Vastra na koi pata Meya Vastra na koi pata Meya Vastra na koi pata Meya Vastra na koi pata Gana Panta Devava Gana Panta Devava Sabatuma Sehata Om Jaya Lakshmi Mata Shubha Guna Mandira Sundara Kshiro Dadijata Meya Kshiro Dadijata Meya Kshiro Dadijata Meya Kshiro Dadijata Ratna Chaturna Satuma Vina Ratna Chaturna Satuma Vina Koi Nahim Pata Om Jaya Lakshmi Mata Mahalakshmi Viharati Jo koi Janagata Meya Jo koi Janagata Meya Jo koi Janagata Meya Jo koi Janagata Purananda Samata Jaya Lakshmi Mata, Om Jaya Lakshmi Mata, Jaya Jaya Lakshmi Mata, Tumako Nishadina Sevata, Tumako Nishadina Sevata, Mara Vishnu Vinata, Om Jaya Lakshmi Mata, Om Jaya Lakshmi Mata, Tvameva Mata, Tvapita, Tvameva, Tvameva Bandhusya Sakha, Tvameva, Tvameva Vidya Dravinam, Tvameva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityurmaham Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Hari Om. Prem se bolo Shri Lakshmanayana Bhagavan ki, Prem se bolo Sri Bhutabhrteshwarnath Narasimha Bhagavan ki, Prem se bolo Shri Radha Krishna Kanelal ki, Prem se bolo Shri Mavata Kriya Babaji ki, Prem se bolo Shri Ramanujacharya ki, Prem se bolo Satgurudeva Sri Swami Vishwananda Mahaprabhu ki. Krishnaya Govindaya Gopijanavalabhaya Paraya Paramapurushaya Parakarma Mantra Yantra Tantra Oshadasta Shastrani Samara Samara Mrityo Mochaya Mochaya Om Namo Bhagavate Mahasudarshana Dipe Jvala Prita Sarvati Shobna Humpat Parasme Parabrahmane Paramjyotishe Swaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Hari Om. Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Sham Venkatamana Govinda, Gopika Jivasmaranam Govinda, Bhaktavatsala Govinda, 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 Pundalika Varade, Eknath Namade, Pandrinath Maharaj ki Jai, Samasta Bhakta Mandali ki Jai, Alvarem Tirumana Tirumani Kale Sharana.